Most of us grow up believing a comforting myth that intelligence is destiny. That if you are smart enough, if your IQ is high enough, life will somehow fall into place. School reinforces it, society rewards it, and parents proudly measure it. Yet Daniel Goleman begins emotional intelligence by quietly shattering that illusion. He opens a door to an unsettling truth. Some of the most brilliant people fail miserably at relationships, careers, and inner peace, while others with average IQs thrive, lead, and inspire. The difference, Goleman argues, is not how well we think, but how well we feel, understand, and manage emotions. From the very first pages, the book pulls you into a new way of seeing human potential, suggesting that emotions are not the enemies of reason, but its silent partners, and often its true drivers. Goleman takes us back to the roots of emotional life by explaining how the brain evolved. Long before humans learned to calculate or reason abstractly, they needed to survive. The emotional brain, particularly the amygdala, developed as an early warning system, scanning the environment for danger and reacting instantly. This emotional circuitry works faster than the rational brain, often hijacking our behavior before logic even has a chance to speak. Goleman uses vivid examples of people who explode in rage, freeze in fear, or act impulsively, not because they choose to, but because their emotional brain overrides their thinking brain. This phenomenon, which he calls emotional hijacking, explains why intelligent people sometimes make shockingly poor decisions under stress. Understanding this is the first step toward emotional intelligence, recognizing that emotions are powerful forces that must be understood and guided, not suppressed. As the book unfolds, Goleman carefully dismantles the idea that emotions are messy, irrational distractions. Instead, he shows how emotions carry crucial information. Fear alerts us to danger, anger signals injustice, sadness points to loss, and joy reinforces behaviors that help us thrive. Problems arise not from emotions themselves, but from our inability to recognize, regulate, and express them appropriately. Emotional intelligence, in Goleman's framework, is the ability to perceive emotions accurately, understand their meanings, manage them effectively, and use them to guide behavior in productive ways. This ability, he argues, is as important, if not more important, than traditional intelligence when it comes to success in life. One of the most striking sections of the book explores childhood and emotional learning. Goleman emphasizes that emotional intelligence is not fixed at birth. It is learned, shaped, and practiced, especially during early years. Children who are taught to name their feelings, calm themselves, empathize with others, and resolve conflicts peacefully grow into adults who are more resilient and socially competent. He contrasts this with children who grow up emotionally neglected or harshly disciplined, who may develop poor impulse control, aggression, or emotional numbness. Through research and real-life stories, Goleman shows how emotional lessons, or the lack of them, can ripple through a lifetime, affecting mental health, relationships, and career outcomes. The book then moves into the realm of empathy, which Goleman presents as the cornerstone of social intelligence. Empathy is the ability to sense what others are feeling, to read emotional cues, and to respond with care. Goleman explains that empathy begins in the brain and nervous system, where mirror neurons and emotional attunement allow us to feel into another person's experience. Without empathy, relationships become transactional and shallow. With empathy, trust, cooperation, and compassion flourish. Goleman demonstrates how empathy affects everything from parenting and friendships to leadership and moral behavior. He even connects empathy deficits to societal problems like violence, cruelty, and indifference to suffering. A particularly compelling part of the book examines emotional intelligence in the workplace. Goleman challenges the corporate obsession with IQ, technical skills, and credentials, presenting evidence that emotional competencies often matter more for professional success. Self-awareness helps leaders understand their strengths and blind spots. Self-regulation prevents impulsive decisions and destructive behavior. Motivation fuels perseverance and passion beyond external rewards. Empathy allows leaders to inspire, coach, and connect with teams. Social skills enable collaboration, influence, and conflict resolution. Goleman shows that the best leaders are not necessarily the smartest in the room, but those who can manage themselves and their relationships effectively. Emotional intelligence, he argues, is what turns talent into performance. Throughout the book, Goleman repeatedly returns to the idea of self-awareness as the foundation of emotional intelligence. To be emotionally intelligent, one must first recognize emotions as they arise. This requires paying attention to inner states without judgment. People who lack self-awareness often feel controlled by their emotions, while those who cultivate it gain a sense of choice. Goleman describes emotionally self-aware individuals as being able to step back from their feelings, observe them, and decide how to respond rather than react. This skill, though subtle, has enormous implications for mental health, decision-making, and personal growth. Another major theme is emotional regulation, which Goleman is careful to distinguish from emotional suppression. Suppression, he warns, can lead to emotional numbness or explosive outbursts later on. Regulation, on the other hand, involves understanding emotions, soothing oneself, reframing situations, and choosing constructive responses. Goleman discusses techniques such as cognitive reappraisal, mindfulness, and delayed gratification, showing how they help individuals handle stress, anxiety, and anger more effectively. He ties these skills to resilience, arguing that emotionally intelligent people bounce back from setbacks faster because they do not become trapped in destructive emotional cycles. Motivation, in Goleman's model, goes beyond ambition or external rewards. It involves emotional tendencies that guide or facilitate reaching goals, such as optimism, commitment, and the ability to delay gratification. Goleman draws on studies showing that people who can manage impulses and remain focused despite frustration tend to succeed more consistently over time. He connects this to the famous marshmallow experiment, illustrating how emotional control in childhood predicts success decades later. Motivation rooted in emotional intelligence allows individuals to persist not because they must, but because they find meaning and satisfaction in the process. The social dimension of emotional intelligence becomes even more pronounced as Goleman explores relationships. He explains how emotional attunement affects intimacy, communication, and conflict. Couples who can recognize and validate each other's emotions tend to navigate disagreements more successfully. Those who dismiss or attack emotional expression often fall into cycles of resentment and disconnection. Goleman uses these insights to show that emotional intelligence is not just a personal asset, but a relational one, shaping the quality of our closest bonds. Goleman also expands the scope of emotional intelligence to society at large. He discusses how emotional illiteracy contributes to social problems, such as violence, addiction, and mental illness. When people cannot manage their emotions or empathize with others, destructive behaviors become more likely. Conversely, societies that invest in emotional education, teaching children empathy, self-control, and cooperation, lay the groundwork for healthier communities. Goleman envisions emotional intelligence as a form of preventive medicine, reducing human suffering by addressing its emotional roots. One of the most hopeful messages in the book is that emotional intelligence can be cultivated at any stage of life. Through practice, feedback, and reflection, individuals can strengthen emotional skills just as they strengthen muscles. Goleman emphasizes that change requires awareness, motivation, and sustained effort, but it is entirely possible. This makes emotional intelligence not a fixed trait, but a lifelong journey of growth. As the book draws toward its conclusion, Goleman circles back to his central claim, that emotional intelligence reshapes our understanding of what it means to be smart. Intelligence is not merely the ability to solve abstract problems, but the capacity to navigate life wisely. It is knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to persist and when to let go, when to act and when to reflect. Emotional intelligence integrates heart and mind, reason and feeling, individual and social needs. In the end, emotional intelligence leaves the reader with a quiet but powerful realization. Success, happiness, and fulfillment are not determined solely by how sharp our minds are, but by how deeply we understand ourselves and others. By learning to work with our emotions rather than against them, we unlock a form of intelligence that shapes every moment of our lives. Goleman's message is both humbling and empowering. The skills that matter most are not reserved for a gifted few, but available to anyone willing to pay attention, practice, and grow.